Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Round 10. And this is where traditionally we'd be counting down to home. We do not get that opportunity to do that at the moment. We are still in the middle of this championship. And with that, this battleground will continue to be fought. But here on Catalan soil, it is Montemelo, Spain, where we find ourselves here. The Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Welcome to the dyno test here as we get round 10, sort of the iRacing Grand Prix Tour. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone watching around the world. My name is Jake Sperry. Caitlin Penny alongside me for the ride today. Jay Kennedy in production as we get ourselves situated with where we need to be. Zooming on down to Barcelona in northeastern Spain. Caitlin, there is one thing that must be said about this circuit. It is one which is made to break machinery. And here today, this is one that is a tyre breaker as we get ourselves ready for action.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jake. Well, a wise man once told me that every circuit has its merit, and this particular track is very much a test circuit in that it does very much lean into testing the cars and the drivers and their wills and wits. And yes, the tyres are definitely going to come into play today. Strategy will be important, keeping a cool head will be important, and I'm sure that we're going to see some alternating approaches to this race in the next 66 or so laps.
Yeah, and those laps are going to be mightily, mightily important to getting themselves together. There are always opportunities to find passes. Lekaixa turn 10 is going to be a really important one to see. And, of course, that reintroduced final two corners of Europe Car and New Holland. No need for the Iraq chicane there that did chop up the flow. It is free-flowing in terms of the racing action they'll have today. Watch out for overtakes at Elf. That's going to be the key place to get it done. And, of course, the snapback at Repsol if you've got a chance to get back forward and find a way to make those places. So that's where we're going to be keeping an eye out on things today. That is what we're dealing with. 65 laps worth of racing, minimum of 2 tyre compounds to work with. And Caitlin, DRS I think is going to be really important here. Lap 3, that will become available to the drivers.
Absolutely. You have a very long start-finish straight here. It's one of the longest runs to turn 1 of any circuit on the calendar. So the start will be important, but also that will come into play when the DRS is activated as well. And you have a second DRS zone on the back straight. So that's heading from Campsa down to Lekaixa. And so plenty of overtaking opportunities. It's not the sort of track where you are forced to sit behind another car, but the corner before both of those DRS zones is quite fast, so you do have to really hang on to the car to make sure you can get a run onto those straights. So yeah, like I said before, keep your wits about you, and it is possible, but not entirely easy.
Not entirely easy. Let's talk championship standings then. As we walk into today, it is so important to note that Jordan Gronkowski has now found himself back in range with Jacob Reed here. 18 points the margin at the front. Eduardo Radice, a distant third, still has a chance to affect these top two in the championship, with no Parker, Lux, Martinez, Pula, or Vaughan last time out for 2 consecutive races. The 4th through 8th position in the championship has remained fairly stagnant. Nick Burke has climbed himself up to 9th, and Paul O'Regan, with his first non-starter of the season last time out, finds himself holding off George van Rensburg, 10th place in the championship. When it goes to the iRacing standings, though, Jordan Gronkowski is walking away here to what is now a 170-point lead right now at the top of the iRacing standings.
Yeah, and we should see the Sim Speed Championship as well, which is similar in terms of how it. We just saw it. Yeah, sorry, my apologies. It's similar in terms of how it lines up, with a couple of differences. You have Eduardo Radice and Jacob Reed slightly swapped between the two, but realistically, the drivers will be focusing on this particular race and what's going to be happening over the next few dozen laps or so. But you can see the weather conditions on the bottom right there. It's a decently sunny day here at Barcelona, as it tends to be in Catalonia in Spain, and 30 degrees Celsius. Wow, I imagine our broadcaster Jay Kennedy longs for the days when he could see stats like that.
Well, it's 50 degrees track temperature. It is sweltering here. 20 past 4. This is the grid that we've got here today. Jacob Reed has put the car half a second clear almost on pole position, with Eduardo Radice alongside it. Then Jordan Gronkowski in third alongside Anthony Cat. Those two came together at Long Beach. Cat is hoping for that not to happen again. Edward Apari will start 5th, with George van Rensburg in 6th position. Connor Pula back for today in this race will go from 7th. 8th will belong to Norton Motta, the Brazilian, going from that 8th place. Nick Burke will start from 9th, the driver 9th in the championship, with Klaus Siemetz rounding out the top 10. A first start for Andre Longe. He will go from 11th place, with Florian Kammer making it a Club Diach, or a German, 6th row of the grid. Then it's Frankie Francica on home soil. He will go from 13th, along with Paul O'Regan, with Dan Piazza in 15th, and Jason Green in 16th position. Ken Nielsen couldn't quite put qualifying together in 17th, and nor could Emily Van Camp, who was struggling with audio issues through qualifying. As such, could only manage 18th, with Tom Lightgeb making up 19th, and Balazs Galliar, the only driver not to set a qualifying lap time here today, as these drivers now will have 2 minutes to get themselves gridded up and getting themselves ready for what will be a tough, grueling 65 laps in the heat right now. Track should cool as the race goes on, and that's going to be massive here in terms of strategy, depending on who wants to work with what. Of course, the higher temperatures means you're going to get a lot more tyre wear, and almost everybody deciding to start on the medium compound tyres for this reason and this reason alone. We're expecting a 2-stop race here today, potentially even a 3 might be on the card, but 2 might be the aim of the game, with the track cooling later on here as they get ready. But now you get the sense, Reed, Radice, Gronk, those 3 at the front are going to be the main pretenders for this championship. This is the longest run to turn 1. This is the biggest challenge that these drivers have faced so far. Lights out here at Barcelona, and we're underway. Good start from the 3rd row there by Edward Apari. He'll immediately challenge here off of the start. Everyone making a good getaway as they run now down to Elf Corner, turn number 1. Radice dropping back into 3rd as Gronk has moved up to 2nd. A crucial start that was going to be needed there, and everybody now charging, and there goes Anthony Cat back through the inside. Everybody dicing it around the Renault.
Yeah, so the top 4 in iRating, now the top 4 in the race, and it looks to have been relatively clean. Still some swapping about going on. And a spinner, and around goes Norton Motta. Oh, that's a shame. I was really impressed by his qualifying time.
That's how quickly it can go wrong. There's more trouble down at Sayak Corner right now, and that's Connor Pula who finds himself in trouble on the opening lap. You'd expect the tyres to get up to temperature quickly in the hot conditions, but these drivers are sliding about right now. Nick Burke in 8th position, holding off Dan Piazza. Both of them making good progress. Piazza up 6 on the opening lap of this race. He's having a scorcher of a start as they rush in. A little bit more side by side then as they try and charge through. That's Klaus Siemens getting it done on Florian Kammer. He'll drop back, but at the bank, Sabadell, he will try and cash in a move. Look at that for a comeback. Little bit of a slide and contact to boot.
Little bit of contact, but they're okay. Here they come. Oh, and a big twitch, big twitch, but he hangs on to it. Now they go through the final corner, the circuit simply, or the corner simply known as Catalunya, and down the start-finish straight where we will see DRS coming into play later on. You can see the cars ducking and weaving behind each other, trying to line up a move. You can see Klaus Siemens now losing out to Kent Nielsen, who goes around the outside and just about keeps his wheels within the white line.
You are dancing on the limit every single time here at Barcelona, and look at the pack that has formed right now with Kent Nielsen, Siemens, Franchitta in there, Van Kamp, Green, O'Regan, Galliard, Pula and Norton Motta trying to get on the back of this. This is big. Down the hill here in towards here what is going to be turn number 5 out on track, the Seat corner, and now looking back up the hill to Wirth, and there's a little bit of a wide line taken by Siemens. That will bring Franchitta into play up the hill, the off-camber right, which is so difficult to get correct there of Kamp's corner, and there is, of course, Leclerc, so they will have DRS there next time by, but at the moment, it's going to be tough. Let's take a look back at what happened to Norton Motta off the start, Caitlin.
Yeah, here we go. So he's going up the inside of Conor Pula. Now we know that these two are the two who spun off, although I don't think it was related because you can see that Motta goes off all by himself. Now we're watching Conor Pula as he heads down through turn 4, Repsol. He's being joined, and there's a little touch there. Now who was that, Jake?
Well, that is the question to be asked there. That was not ideal in Conor Pula's race as he went through, but this is where you're getting the sense that these drivers are having to really scrap and off the road once more. Look at that, Norton Motta was there as he went through, so that could have been some drama earlier. It was Andre Lange who made the contact then in the early goings then with Conor Pula. That's why he dropped back, but you're getting a sense here down there at the bottom. One car in the pits, that's Tom Lightgib who is down in there right now. So already we are getting a sense that these early laps are causing a few problems here and there.
Yeah, it's been a bit more hectic than I thought it would be. Here's a replay, and we're on board, and that's going to be contact. This is Andre Lange tapping Conor Pula into a spin, and I was a bit worried when I saw Pula and Motta side by side that last time around, because if there's one thing that these guys don't need in their race, it's more contact, as you see Pula kicking up the dust a little bit. Now we look back up towards the final corner. You've got Jordan Gronkowski going very quickly in second position, trying to hold off Eduardo Radice. But talking of very quickly, the fastest driver on track, as always, is Jacob Reed, who extends his advantage to 1.5 seconds at the head of the field.
Yeah, leading this one here on lap 4. Out there at the moment, outside of the DRS range after 2 laps, the perfect start to his race with Gronkowski there behind, Radice and Anthony Cat having a good run. 1:18.6, the fast lap of the race. Now, Tom Lightgib actually was a very interesting incident on the end of lap 2. He had an issue through turn 13, put it in the tyres on the inside heading towards the final corner, but couldn't get the car slowed up in time after his incident to actually get himself into pit lane. We're going to take a look at it now here on the SimSpeed replay. He does it all on his own. Too much curb on the inside, back steps out as he goes through, grabs the wall on the inside, and by the time he goes through, he thinks about, do I pit, do I not? So he stays out, and he had to go a lap on his own around the track before pitting.
Bizarre. If you're right by the pits like that and you picked up some damage, it's probably best to just duck in just in case. But anyway, here's Eduardo Radice on the back of Jordan Gronkowski, and remember, as of a couple of laps ago, DRS is active. You can see the rear wing flap opening on the back of Eduardo Radice's car. He's getting closer to Gronkowski, who goes up the inside, and the top 4 are now in the positions 1, 2, 3, 4, judging by their iRating. Radice has made the move.
That was comfortable on the straight. He kept really close, and now Anthony Cat might want to send his moment through compared to what happened. Norton Motta sets the fastest lap of the race, then down in 17th place. Now, he won't get a SimSpeed Championship point down there in 17th, unless he can climb his way up into the top 10 with everybody on the same tyre. First time we've actually said that all season, everyone's starting on the same tyre. This is going to be interesting in terms of how this strategy devolves, in terms of when do you go off the medium and onto what tyre do you go. I don't think the hards are necessarily the easiest tyre to use, but they might be beneficial compared to two softs today, just with how the track's working, Caitlin. But 3-stop on the softs can be aggressive. Watch out, though. Look a little bit further back down the field. This is Emily Van Camp trying to line up Klaus Siemens.
Yeah, and we did see some people practicing on the hard tyres earlier on, but I can't imagine that they're preferential. We'll have to wait and see. But of course, everyone does have to use at least 2 compounds of tyre out of the soft, medium and hard. So if you don't want to go on the soft, if you think they're going to overheat or something along those lines, then you can absolutely run the hards. Now, Eduardo Radice has just set fastest lap. He's now clear of Jordan Gronkowski. So we'll see if he can catch up to Jacob Reed. Of course, some of that will come because of the DRS. And talking of DRS, this is a move being lined up by, is that George van Rensburg, or is it slightly further down the order?
Emily Van Camp.
Emily Van Camp, my apologies. Similarly liveried, rather pinkish, purpley cars. Van Camp is fighting with Siemens in green over 13th, 14th, 15th.
Over to Repsol corner, turn 4. A lot of these open style corners here, the parabolic style corners, which are nightmarish for tyre wear out there. You're always trying to put the power down as early as you can. That's Klaus Siemens half spinning and will drop right to the back of the group.
It's a decent save, but his tyres aren't going to like that, and he's lost plenty of time and plenty of positions. So Siemens down to 18th position now. The car number 18 drops behind Connor Paula and Norton Motta, who of course were badly affected by those opening lap incidents. But he gathers it up, he carries on, and it could have been a lot worse. Oh, yeah,
well,
no, he's dropped it again.
Yeah, so he's obviously compounding those issues, and he would have been so spooked by the fact that he had it through in 4th gear. He was trying desperately to go through. I think he just grabbed grass there on the entry through to Lekaixa corner, and thank you very much. Balazs Gallia, Mr. Galli's going to fly through. Now, this is what we're going to see. This is a weird one here, and it just goes to show you how much you have to work on the tyres, because he's through the corner, and just as he's about to upshift, the car's completely decides, no, I don't want to play. Meanwhile, if we go back to live, it's Frankie Francica who's losing out places here. He's just dropped 2 as he went wide at Lekaixa as well. Van Camp through, Green through, and look at Paula Reagan now having to try to hold up Norton Motta around the outside of turn 4, trying to make this one work. Inside then, over at the Seat corner, sit down and deliver that one. Norton Motta, thank you very much.
Yeah, very good move there from Norton Motta, and that's how you use corners like that. If you can hold yourself around the outside of a parabolic curve and you know that there's going to be an inside line for you just waiting at the next corner, then you absolutely can use that to your advantage. This is how Francica lost a couple of places in the early part of the lap. Just got slightly mugged, got off his rhythm, and then got mugged again by Jason Green on the exit of the corner. So that was all triggered by a good move from Emily Van Camp, and Francica just has to get his head down and get that rhythm back.
Yeah, absolutely, as we focus on these drivers now, 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Eduardo Radice is whittling that gap down to 1.3 seconds. We are on lap 8 of 65, but we do need to point this out, Caitlin. 6 podiums this season for Eduardo Radice, 0 wins.
Yeah, he's been there or thereabouts, hasn't he? I remember Suzuka, he probably could have won that race. He had the pace to, but dropped it at the end of the first lap and ended up spending the rest of the race trying to gain those places back. Eduardo Radice absolutely has the pace to win today as well. He just needs to stick with Jacob Reed, and even if he can't overtake him in the early stages of the race, there's plenty more opportunities, so it is not over yet. But of course, he has the charging Gronkowski and Cat on his tail. The top 4, I know I've brought up many times that they are the top 4 in iRacing as well, but they have shared the top 4 positions at many a race so far this season, occasionally split up by the likes of Jorge Martinez, who's not here today. But you've got to say that the races between those 4 and Eduardo Radice, if he's going to win a race this year, now is as good a chance as any.
Oh, Balazs Gallia is out, and it's a massive shunt out of 3rd corner. and it's so difficult because you got that crossover. He has a wiggle through the middle of the corner, no downforce there. Rear right tyre implodes, and that is a retirement then, and the first one of this race. Balázs Galliar is out, and now look at that. That's Edward Apari through into 5th, past George van Rensburg.
Yeah, it's an easy mistake to make. These cars are very reliant on their aerodynamic grip, which you have less of going at a slower speed. We're now looking a little bit further down the order. Looks like, oh, actually, no, this is Apari versus George van Rensburg. Apari goes for a move, actually, and he's going to get through. Now, I saw that as a replay, but I think that wasn't too long ago, because he's only just got up into 5th position on my screen. But yes, he is through. So Apari 5th, Van Rensburg 6th.
Yes, so that is the change, and off the road goes George van Rensburg. He spun it, and somehow avoiding it is Nick Burke, and Andre Lange is going to pick up 2 for the troubles there as he goes through. Now having to run the outside, he's overcooked it through the corner, so held on by Nick Burke. George van Rensburg, oh my word, his race flashed before his eyes. Watch out for the race lead though, because look at Eduardo Radiz closing in on Jacob Reed. We got 4 to the floor at the front.
Jacob Reed's last lap wasn't great at all. He lost 0.6 of a second to the likes of Radiz and Gronkowski. There must have been a mistake. And of course, Eduardo Radiz has the fastest lap of the race, is one of the fastest cars, and now he's in DRS range. This is disaster for Jacob Reed, because he was getting clear, and now he no longer has that buffer. So watch this. Eduardo Radiz will spend the rest of the lap trying to line him up, and then maybe have a pop into turn 1.
Well, this is a big moment in the context of this race with Jacob Reed, who had been absolutely fantastic last time we were with you at Montreal, has gone first, second, first in his last 3 races. Eduardo Radiz, 2nd, 9th, 2nd, and is looking to try and break that through, and drivers are struggling on the tyres. It's Gronk in 3rd who's actually struggled, as Radiz now gets a gap. Look at that gap now. Anthony Cat, who comes into today 22nd in the championship, is eyeing up 15 championship points if he can find this move.
Anthony Cat has clearly done better this season than his standing would suggest. He's been up there and thereabouts. Now we're looking, of course, at the move. Here we go. Eduardo Radiz has gone to the inside, and he takes the lead away from Jacob Reed. And in the meantime, Anthony Cat has gone to P3, so it's all changed in the first 4 positions.
So, with Eduardo Radiz now leading, Jacob Reed on the back foot has got to try and find a way to go out there and attack here. We're expecting pit stops at around lap 20 at the very earliest. That's what we're expecting, but we'll take another look at what happened here for George van Rensburg. Lekajta, turn 10, overcooks it in, grabs the grass, and it's so easy to do that. Nick Burke, that is an inspired decision to make that hijink move to the outside, because he could have very easily have been out of this race had he had decided to stay on that inside track.
Yeah, great avoidance from Nick Burke. Unfortunately for Andre Lange, he ended up being held out to dry at the next corner as a result of all of that as well. I've heard someone say, ooh, what's happened here? We're about to see a replay. Klaus Siemens.
So on his own, heading over towards first corner, and it's going to take another victim here by the looks of things. So rushing on through the left-hander, and it's just he wants to make that transfer. The back steps out in front of the front, and that's the issue that you have here around this circuit. You need that aerodynamic downforce to help keep yourself pinned down to the track. Jacob Reed, as close as you want to get here in towards Elf Corner, turn number 1 out here on the track, not going to find it. But you are seeing that you need, Caitlin, that downforce through Firth Corner. You've got to drive a lot more aggressively. Otherwise, you're really going to lose out and see the car spin about and very easily find the end of your race. Connor Pooler, first real taker in the pits.
Yeah, exactly. What I was going to say earlier is that as you're accelerating, you don't quite have the aerodynamic grip that you would have when you're moving at a higher speed in a corner such as Kampse. So when you're putting the power down, that's when you're at your most vulnerable to losing control. But what I do want to bring up, as you see Connor Pooler, the first driver to take soft tyres in this race, what I do want to bring up is that I commentated a race at this circuit, a Grand Prix length race on rFactor 2 just 2 days ago, And the race was won not in the opening stages of the race, not with a battle on track, but by how the drivers got up to speed after their first pit stop. There was a driver who came out in beautiful clean air, got up to speed really quickly, got through the traffic that he did end up encountering as quickly as he possibly could, and built up about 5 seconds of an advantage that he was able to hang on to win the race. In this particular race, they clearly don't have 5 seconds of an advantage just yet. But when they make their pit stops, when they get those new tyres on, you very much could build an advantage in your own favour if you can get the tyres up to speed quicker than your opponents.
There, we're focusing on this 3-car group. Andre Lange holding off Dan Piazza up 7 places. The only other driver up 7 in this race is Kent Nielsen. Right now, the Edmonton Oilers fan out there, but now watch out for defence. Here goes Florian Kammeyer, straight to the inside, commands the apex, and Dan Piazza has to take avoiding action there. That was ruthless from Florian Kammeyer, and he will love that move as he moves into 8th place.
Slightly different livery from Kammeyer this weekend. I don't think we've seen that one before, but yes, he's made the move up into P8 ahead of Dan Piazza. You can see behind them Kent Nielsen, George van Rensburg and the like following them through. There's still a bit of a train further back, and there you can see what I was talking about, how Van Rensburg and Van Kamp have similarly liveried cars, especially when the sun glints off them from the front like that. But at least when they're side by side, you can tell who's who. Now we're watching on board with Nick Burke, and this is his awesome evasive maneuver when Van Rensburg lost control. Really, really fast reactions there, and it's all down to him that he's still in this race at this point.
Most drivers would pivot to the inside there. He saw where the accident was going, and he was an oracle in the way that he saw that going. Jordan Gronkowski in 4th position, has not finished lower than 4th this season, has not been off the podium since the opener, Caitlin, at the Nürburgring.
Jordan Gronkowski's driven a wonderful season, only 4th position so far, and it's a miracle that we're saying only 4th position, considering how high 4th actually is in a race as competitive as this. I was most impressed by him at Long Beach, where, of course, he ended up winning by a lap when all hell broke loose over the course of the race. But he was down. He was in last position at the end of the first lap of that particular race, and was just able to drive it home from there. But watch him now as he's on the back of Anthony Cat. His race is very much not over yet, despite the fact he's dropped down a couple of positions in the early stages. And you've got to say that he's got to look at the long-term aspect of this race. Still plenty of time to go.
Yeah, there is a long way. Lap 14 here of 65, and we still got opportunities knocking on the door, thinking about how close do you want to be to Anthony Cat. He's going to leave it right to the last moment, commands the inside, gets back up into 3rd position. Look at how much time it's cost him now. He's 3.3 seconds adrift to the race leader, Eduardo Rodis. This would not be in the script for Jordan Gronkowski, and Anthony Cat realises this, that he is not going to want to fight too hard with Jordan Gronkowski at this stage of the race. Anthony Cat has a flair for the obtusely different strategy out there over the course of this race. That mistake, though, through turn 5 is going to give Jordan Gronkowski about 5 or 6 car lengths.
Well, there you go then. These two have swapped twice in this race already. There's nothing to say it won't continue to go that way. Connor Paula now sets the fastest lap of the race, but he is down in 17th position, so would not receive a point for that if he was to finish there. And Van Rensburg's lost it. I noticed he was swapping places on the timing screen, but he has lost control, and that's his 2nd spin of the race.
Well, easily done, and that is just the back stepping out on power, very similar to what happened before. So we're going to take a look here through Repsol at turn 4. It's again here down at Seat, turn 5. Out on track, pivots in nicely, but tries to pick the power a bit early, and Arias just don't like it. This is a real limited circuit.
Yeah, definitely, and it's exactly what I was saying before about the acceleration. And yes, and Andre Lange is in the pits, and also in behind him we've got Dan Piazza and another driver too, Kent Nielsen, so 3 in.
3 drivers all deciding this is the time to make the stop. And the reason why is they'll be seeing Connor Pooler lighting the timing sheets up and potentially putting himself into play to leapfrog these drivers. 3.8 second stop for Andre Lange, and he will now look to try and get up to speed. But look at Connor Pooler on the straight. He's going to get by all of them.
There you go. When life gives you lemons, when you spin on the first lap, you make lemonade by changing your strategy up, doing something slightly different to your opponents. And we'll have to wait and see what ends up happening as the race goes on. But it may well end up being, and yes, you can see Dan Piazza's come out on mediums once again, as was just pointed out by our cameraman. But yeah, you change up your strategy and you can still salvage something from the race, just as Gronkowski did at Long Beach. One thing that I did just notice a couple of laps ago, why I had a little bit of a sharp intake of breath, was that Nick Burke drove through the gravel a little bit at the final corner, and that, as you see Jacob Reed getting very close to the back of Radice, that may indicate that some of these drivers are not quite as comfortable as they were at the start of the race. The car maybe not quite handling the same as it did, but it doesn't matter now because he's in the pits, as is Edouard Apari-Ari.
Yeah, these hot conditions, the tyres aren't lasting as long as they want, maybe only 75% of what they're expecting. So there's those pits, out and away they go, but just in front of them, O'Regan, Van Rensburg and Norton Motta all together, all trying to put themselves in play. Now, Nick Burke and Edward Apari-Ari have come out ahead here of Connor Pooler. That's quite crucial, so they're clear of that group. But as we focus then to those drivers right now that have made that choice, that's really aggressive there by Dan Piazza, but you get the sense that Piazza on those mediums is going to be fighting with a hand behind his back. Maybe not as much confidence in the soft as some of the other drivers deciding that the soft tyre's the right move, trying to find a look back at Repsol's not there.
No, not quite an opportunity there. And on the exit, you're going to get better grip if you're in the position of Kent Nielsen. And you can see those yellow tyres. Sorry, what's that?
Jacob Reed has just come in, so he had just fallen outside of 1 second here in terms of the DRS. And here goes Anthony Cat straight back at Jordan Gronkowski. These two are going to be at it all of this first stint and then some as they go through. So Jacob Reed had just lost 1 second to Eduardo Radice. He said perfect time to dive into the pits. Soft tyres on, and into the pits now will come George Van Rensburg as out comes Jacob Reed.
Yes, that's the third time that Gronkowski and Cat have swapped positions, even before the first pit stop. And there is Jacob Reed. He's come out in 7th position in this race with a couple of seconds to gain before Jason Green, who is fighting with Emily Van Camp just up ahead of him. Meanwhile, fastest lap goes the way of Andre Langer on those soft tyres. He was impressive with his pace in the early stages, despite the little bit of contact we saw with Norton Motta. And now, of course, the leaders will have to react. Radice, Cat, Gronkowski, they will not want to be undercut and jumped by Jacob Reed in this stage.
No, they really will not. And that is going to be what they keep in mind. This is a tough race. This is a dyno test on this machinery. It is always going to be tough when dealing with the tyres. Eduardo Radice is in. He has to cover the move by Jacob Reed. And that opens the door up then for Cat and Gronkowski, because they can go longer on this first stint. They will cede some time away to these drivers, but look at what Jacob Reed's having to try and pilot his way through. This is a massive amount of trouble right now, managing to dispatch a Jason Green. Now looking at Emily Van Camp for position, and Eduardo Radice here needs to get up to speed quickly, because there goes 1, there goes 2, there goes 3. Yeah. Jacob Reed will take the net race lead again, and crucially will get cars right through the middle. Kammeyer breezes by.
2 cars between them, and 2 scrabbling cars at that. This is great stuff for Jacob Reed, who has really benefited from that. Radice also on the soft tyres, so this is a straight fight between Reed and Radice. I was fascinated to see Cat and Gronkowski stay out, because it's clear that they're focusing more on each other at this point in the race than they are on Radice and Reed. And now Radice is losing handfuls of time. He has caught these drivers at a really bad point on the track. Reed had it a little bit easier. Admittedly did have to pass Green in the corners, but was able to pass the likes of Van Camp on the straight. And now, of course, and Kammeyer on the straight as well. And now, of course, Radice has got to pass them while they're fighting each other. Here he goes up the inside.
He won't take one, he'll take two. Wide goes Kamaya, and Emily Van Camp will lose nothing for that move being done. Brilliantly done there in terms of that pass, but look at the time that it has cost Eduardo Radice here. 4.5 seconds behind now Jacob Reed. That is an age of Turnham.
Yeah, that's very dramatic for Eduardo Radice, and that's what I was talking about. It's not just to do with how quickly you can get your tyres up to temperature, it's where you come out in terms of your opponents. As Paul O'Regan drops a couple of places, he's come into the pits now as well. And also how it sets you up for the rest of the race strategy-wise. So Anthony Catt and Jordan Gronkowski still staying out. They're clearly running longer, trying to leave themselves open to different strategy options. They will lead the race temporarily, but that does mean that Reed and Radice have 13, 14 seconds of clean air in front of them to gain and push on those soft tyres.
Here's the difference. Anthony Catt last time by 120.2. Jacob Reed 116.9. That is pretty much 4 seconds worth of time. You can see it there, 3.3, on that last lap. That is not insignificant, and Anthony Catt will realise that and dive in. I think Jordan Gronkowski here, I think his only chance from this point onwards is to try and extend this out to about lap 30. Really tough on his tyres, but if he can get it out to lap 30, he's on a two-stop.
Yeah, Gronkowski's committed to the two-stop here. He's committed to doing one fewer stop than, or one less stop than what Reed and Radice are doing, that's for certain. Here we are on board with Jason Green. He's approaching the back of Florian Kamai and will go through on the straight. Goes to the inside. These two fighting for position as out of the pits comes another driver. It's Anthony Catt. So Catt now coming out in a bad position. He's now going to have to pass Green on track. And look at the amount of time he's lost to Reed and Radice.
Yeah, that is quite startling here. 6 seconds to Eduardo Radice, 11 seconds to Jacob Reed. This first stint has really pushed it together, but look at how he attacks against Jason Green. Easy done with that pass, and we'll jump on forward there. Lots of tyre tracks there going through that section of road, so it looks like someone's had a little bit of a runoff through there, but it does leave Van Camp, Green, Kamaya and Gronkowski is the only four yet to come in and make a pit stop at this phase of the race. In comes the race leader, Jordan Gronkowski, as we focus on Edward Apari-Ari, hoping he can get close enough at Lekaixa for the pass, trying to open it up for Bank Sabadell, which comes up next. He can't quite get there, but it is Gronk, and now this pit becomes crucial. Look at Apari-Ari, he's desperate.
And now we've got to see what tyres Gronkowski goes on to as well. But Reed will lead the race. He's 4.7 seconds ahead of Radice. And Gronkowski has gone onto the soft tyres as Emily Van Camp goes through into third place. And you can see where Gronk comes out just behind Jason Green, just as Anthony Catt did a lap ago. And that means to say that Catt has jumped Gronkowski on the road. And Gronkowski is committed to doing an alternate strategy with one fewer stop than his opponents.
Very nearly got jumped by Edward Apari-Ari and Nick Burke in that stint by how early they came in to make their stops and jump on through. Now there's fresh tyres out there for one Mr. Jordan Gronkowski. He has just got to settle into the rhythm. Anthony Catt, by comparison, has Emily Van Camp in the sight, all over the back at this moment in time as we focus here on 6th position. But there are moves aplenty happening about. Catt has just made the pass on the timing tower. Emily Van Camp, nothing to fight back with on the mediums.
And I'm really interested to see what Catt's strategy will end up being, because I'd have thought there would be two different strategies available, the 2-stop or the 3-stop, so the Gronkowski strategy or the Reed strategy, and Catt seemed to pit in the middle of both of them, so he's leaving himself open, he's leaving the options open, but at the same time you could argue that the strategy looks half-baked. Here goes Gronkowski flying past Jason Green in the straight, and you can see Edward Apari-Ari attempting to follow him through as well, as he's under heavy pressure from Nick Burke behind him.
Florian Kamai into the pits then from 10th place and making that stop. Watch out, because Nick Burke wants to find some places. Edward Apari-Ari would do it, and that is not ideal, and that's the wall for Dan Piazza.
Yes, and he didn't seem to be turning much there, so something's clearly gone wrong. Possibly a pop-up of some kind or a technical difficulty, and he's out of the race.
Well, he's had contact with George van Rensburg, that's why. And that contact, pretty much everything. You can see here, George van Rensburg, he leaves it so late to send down the inside. Yeah. Contact there for Dan Piazza. I wonder if the car had already had broken suspension by the time he got through. And just like that, race over and done with. Van Kamp is dispatched again at Le Keixer on back-to-back laps. This time, it's Gronk who's found himself a way through. The Scotsman is showing off what he can do, and he's got a set of tyres and he's got license to attack. Van Kamp staying out and committing to a two-stop strategy.
Indeed, and also Jason Green is doing a very similar thing. He was just passed by Edward Apari-Ari and then Nick Burke on the main straight, who lost a little bit of time in the process. Up front, Jacob Reed is still lapping in the 117, the mid 117s, as is Radice behind him and Anthony Kapp behind him. You have slightly slower pace from some of these other drivers, such as Jordan Gronkowski, but that doesn't really matter to them. It's all to do with the strategy and all to do with that one fewer pit stop that they're going to end up doing. There is Jacob Reed, and you can see the gap ever so slightly coming down, actually, between himself and Radice. But not worryingly quickly. He's still got the race at his control, at his discretion, and we should see him using up a little bit more of the car and a little bit more of the energy when he needs to if Radice gets close.
Well, Eduardo Radice has 1 lap fresher tyres than Jacob Reed. That much we do know, and half a second that time gets chunked off there of Jacob Reed's lead, down to 3.7 seconds. Edward Apari-Ari now finding himself stuck. So too Nick Burke at the whims of Emily Van Kamp. On this straight they charge, and which way do you want to go? To the left, every little thing, and then pass to the left. They go. Nick Burke might try for 2 for 1. Edward Apari-Ari covers it defensively through Elf Corner, but now here at Renault, the long 180-degree right-hander, which is torturous on the left-hand side tyres. Nothing there for Nick Burke, but these two finally clear and able to charge on here on lap 25.
And crucially, they both got through at the same time, so the battle continues between Apari-Ari and Nick Burke, and I'm sure that we'll be seeing more of that as it develops. You can see the only 2 drivers still on medium tyres are Van Kamp and Green, who look set to do battle themselves as the race continues. And we're now just over a third of the way through this particular race, so 2/3 of the race to go. That tends to be how fractions work, and still plenty of time for the race to develop. You tend to see in races like this that it all looks a bit confusing in the early stages, and then later on it all comes back together again as the different strategies converge and meet in the middle.
Just saw a flash of the weather here as we hit in-sim time of 5 o'clock. Track has dropped 2 degrees down to 48 Celsius out there at the moment, so that's key. Now into the pits comes Jason Green, who was one of the last drivers to come in, was on the medium tyres as Nick Burke dispatches Edward Apari-Ari with consummate ease into Elf Corner. But this is where Jason Green pretty much opens up the door to the 2-stop strategy out there, moves on to soft tyres as the man from Club Texas, and there is another driver here in a bit of a battle. Connor Pooler, remember, he was the first to pit on the soft tyre, so his tyres right now are graining and going through the cliff process.
Well, talking of Connor Pooler, here he is being overtaken by Kent Nielsen. Nielsen down the inside and gets the move done nicely. That's for 9th position on the road. And here they are in real time with George van Rensburg on the tail. And a little bit, well, that was a poor couple of corners there from Connor Pooler. That's going to allow van Rensburg even closer, heading into the second DRS zone of the lap. No opportunity for van Rensburg though, because Pooler also has DRS from Kent Nielsen ahead of him.
Well, looking at Connor Pooler, he came into the pits lap 12. So end of lap 11, start of lap 12. We're on lap 25. He's officially gone longer on the softs than he has done on the medium tyres on this race. So for Conor Pooler right now. He is paying the piper as finally 26 full laps worth of racing. Emily Van Camp will make the stop.
Indeed, so Van Camp doing it very differently to most of the other drivers, with the exception potentially of Jason Green. Looks set to come out about side by side with Jason Green. He should just about get ahead by the end of the straight. Going to be close between the two of them though. You can see she can't cross that white line on the exit. She is going to come out ahead of Jason Green. So despite Green getting one more lap on that soft tyre, Van Camp was able to cover him off and get that position. A good in-lap from Emily Van Camp. A good long stint, and I'm very interested to see how the race goes from here.
Well, Jason Green has the tyres up to temperature, immediately looking to be aggressive here through Repsol into Seat, heading towards Verth Corner, up the hill, and the nice little bit of furniture on the outside there, that lovely bit of housing there, which houses, believe it or not, as every circuit does on iRacing here, somewhere on each circuit is a picture of Dave Kammeyer, who is, of course, one of the main big honchos over, of course, at iRacing. And on top of that, one Mr. Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Dale, sorry, did you say something Kammeyer? Any relation to Florian?
No relation to Florian. Dave Kammeyer is in the CEO of iRacing.
Okay, I did not know that. That's excellent trivia there. By the way, I think I did just see George van Rensburg swapping places with Conor Pooler. So we saw him setting it up, and he has now got through into 9th position. And the move has been done cleanly by the look of it as well. And the race that we're currently looking at is still Emily Van Camp versus Jason Green over 13th position. Two drivers on a similar strategy, but an alternate strategy to some of their opponents. And I should update you actually that Eduardo Rodis's last lap was 0.3 of a second faster than Reed, and for the first time put him under 3 seconds behind him in this second stint. So my live timing is actually saying striking distance within 10 laps. I'm not sure quite how accurate that is, because it does depend on any potential mistakes, fluctuations in that gap. Reed might be saving up a little bit more energy, but it is true that if he continued at this pace, Eduardo Rodis would be within striking distance of Reed within 10 laps time.
Well, this is so consistent right now from Eduardo Rodis. He is putting Jacob Reed on notice here. That hold-up that he had at the exit on his outlap, where he had to navigate the traffic, was stuck for nigh on a lap trying to make it happen. That's key. Conor Pooler is coming in to make his stop. Now, this is early lap 29 here of 65. This is his second stop, so if he wants to get this one home, he's got to do at least a stint here that is going to be screaming out for 15, 16 more laps. So he's got to continue to do this on his way through. The easy thing for him to remember, though, Caitlin, is the longer that this race goes, the less fuel they have in the car, the easier it is on the tyres.
Yes, of course, but of course he was one of the first drivers to stop in the first place. So it does make sense that he would be one of the first drivers to stop in the second pit window as well. So we're looking now at George van Rensburg, who not only dispatched of the likes of Conor Pooler a lap ago, but he's right on the back of Kent Nielsen now, and approaching Andre Lange as they both are. George van Rensburg is actually really impressing me in this particular race. He seems to get better every time I see him. I remember at the start of the season, he drove a couple of races.
Oh, Lange!
And off the road goes Andre Lange, and he will lose both of those places.
Mr. Long having a long moment there as he went on through the final corner, too aggressive on the curb on the inside, spat out to the outside, and that's how quickly you've got to try and save it. Nielsen holding off Van Rensburg for the moment, but Andre Lange sent through the ringer.
Indeed, up towards Repsol they go. And I was wondering actually whether Kent Nielsen would come under pressure from Van Rensburg in that as well, because he had to really check up to avoid Andre Lange to see where he was going and all of that. And that very nearly allowed Van Rensburg to get through at the end of the straight as well. But Nielsen was just about able to cover him off. May well have used up a bit more energy than he would have liked on the length of that straight. But there you go. Now we head through that second DRS zone, and you can see that Lange has already lost the DRS from the back of Van Rensburg. So costly was that mistake.
Yep, so easy to lose that time, and this is a circuit that is known for being high downforce, Caitlin, and as such, if you do make a mistake, it's a lot more to deal with that dirty air effect, those turbulences that you see. It is very tough around this circuit to follow, and now flicking about, first time under 2 seconds in this stint now. Radice versus Reed, and this is where it's starting to get quite nervy for Jacob Reed, who is looking, of course, to get 3 race victories in 4 race starts, if you include Imola, Long Beach, Montreal, and here today at Barcelona. This is going to be what Jacob Reed is hitching his championship aspirations on. But Eduardo Radice, you would argue, if drivers like Jacob Reed and Jordan Gronkowski have to be up there fighting for the win every single time that we are racing around these circuits right now, Caitlin, Eduardo Radice has got to be perfect from here to the end of the season, you feel?
Yeah, very much so. Eduardo Radice driving pretty perfectly right now, though. You can see him using all of the track, heading out to the final corner and down the start-finish straight, up to nearly 300 kilometers per hour. He will reach 300 kilometers per hour by the end of the straight, and that last lap was pretty good, although very similar between Reed and Radice. They were both in the 119.5s. Now that was Emily Van Kamp putting a move on Florian Kammeyer over that 12th position. I noticed the positions change, and talking of changing, Nick Burke is about to change tyres by the look of it.
Lap 32.65, halfway, which is pretty much in line with what he'll be expecting. In comes Kent Nielsen, and Andre Langer is also into the pits too. So drivers thinking now is the time to try and get through. So where Connor Pooler comes out by comparison, he's only just now going through the final corner. So that's rather interesting. So he's going to be nowhere near Nick Burke. He'll make the pass on Frankie Francica for position, but he'll jump Kent Nielsen here in the stop, and that's right in a place for Connor Pooler, which I think is rather important here. He will always try and undercut, but then he'll have to try and hold on, and that's what his race is going to be all about.
Indeed, we're halfway through the race now, so whatever the drivers have shown us in this first half, they have some time to correct that for the second half, and Jacob Reed pits from the lead now, so in he comes to set up for what will be his probably penultimate stint with 33 laps to go.
Well, he only went 15 laps on his set of soft compound tyres, which I think is quite telling, as Nick Burke will dive down the inside of Florian Kammeyer here. Hendrick, of course, is on the spotter's guide out there for the moment for Florian, so he'd have had a lot of warning in terms of where to come in. Good news for Jacob Reed, though, is that he has come out in a bucket of clean air right now as Edward Apari pits. So question being, as wide goes Nick Burke in the background. Question is, does Eduardo Radice cover this off again?
That's the second time I've seen Nick Burke do that in this race. He's going to come under pressure from Florian Kammeyer here, who goes down the inside.
Oh, abandoned.
Misses the corner. I think he'll have to give that up.
Yeah, he might have a slowdown penalty. He does have a slowdown penalty, so he's going to have to give this up. The man from Pennsylvania, and they are going to dice around him right now. Jason Green going around the outside of Florian Kammeyer for position, and Edward Apari, who's just come out of the pits, has got to try and find a way through. Oh, what a line! Round goes Florian Kammeyer, who was spooked, absolutely spooked.
Well, I don't blame him. That was rather ambitious from Edward Apari, but as Radice pits. But I should say really quickly, that was completely fair from Edward, a very good move in the end. And with Radice in the pits, we're watching Jacob Reed to see what the gap will be at the end of all of this. He comes down the start-finish straight. Radice will emerge from the end of the pits, and I think Reed has gained time by the look of it. He will probably be out to about 4 seconds ahead.
That was well done by Tom Lightgib there. The lap traffic staying out of the way, choosing not to unlap himself compared to Eduardo Radice, but that is big, and this is the move then from Edward Apari. You can see they're tripping up over each other here, and Edward Apari just decided to go in, and it's locked up the rear axles there from Florian Kammeyer, who'd have got a late call, stay right, and as such spins it. There's another look. That's Frankie Francica, who I think is about to lose the place to Kent Nielsen, who flies on through. And that's George Van Rensburg coming out of the pits just behind.
Yep, directly into the middle of them. Of course, Kamaya's spin was absolutely no fault of the passing driver, Eduardo Pari-Ari. That was completely clean racing, and he just kind of lost it by his own volition. And here is Eduardo Pari-Ari versus Jason Green. He should start pulling away with those slightly fresher tyres. Meanwhile, the gap between Reed and Radice has actually come out even more than I thought it would. It appears to be about 5, maybe 6 seconds between the two of them heading down the start-finish straight. There you see it, 6 seconds exactly across the start-finish line. And before all of this happened, it was about 3 seconds, so a definite advantage in the direction of Jacob Reed.
3 seconds for 1 lap's worth of undercut. These hot conditions are really opening up the race to it. Track's dropped again by another 2 degrees, by the way, and as such we're at a 46 degree track temperature at in-sim time of coming up to 5:15 at this moment in time. Not very windy today, so they don't have that to necessarily contend with, but right now Cat and Gronk I think are really interesting in terms of where they stand in the race. How long they decide to go on their soft tyres influences everything else. If they can get to 20 laps to go, maybe 22 laps to go, they could be on a 2-stop strategy, and that might open them up here in terms of what Jacob Reed looks for, what Eduardo Radice looks for, as in comes Anthony Cat right now out of the race lead and down into the pits.
Yep, so he'll lose the race lead to Jordan Gronkowski, who will stay out for another lap. Gets his time in the sun, quite literally, a very warm day here in Spain. And through as well will go Jacob Reed. So where does Anthony Cat come out, especially in relation to, well, Radice he will easily go through as well. And Cat, I mentioned before, was on a very strange strategy compared to the drivers that he was racing. Seems to be in a race of his own at this point in time, and will come out about 6 seconds behind Eduardo Radice, as also into the pits now is Norton Motta from 7th and Paul O'Regan from 9th.
Yep, so those two will jump in. Tom Lightgibb's made his stop and gone through, and there is Kent Nielsen right now, who will look behind at George Van Rensburg trying to make this move as out of the pits comes Lightgibb off the circuit trying to find a pass. Oh, Georgie Porgy putting him by very much, trying to use every trick in the book to find the overtake, and he got a slowdown penalty for going too far out wide.
Oh, that's very harsh. I mean, it's the way the game works, but if you look on board, you can see this rather late move as Kent Nielsen comes across. He was a bit spooked by Lightgibb coming out of the pits at the same time, and I think that Van Rensburg got really unlucky in that one to pick up a slowdown penalty, and now he will be... Well, this is Emily Van Camp under pressure from Nick Burke. This is for 5th position, although you have to remember Van Camp's been on those soft tyres for a very long time.
Yep, so Emily Van Camp here is going to be looking behind and was very long on the opening stint, remember, to try and go forward. So Emily's decision on when to make a stop, I think, is going to be rather crucial to the context of her race, because her alternate, she's probably the best candidate to go to a 2-stop strategy. There goes Nick Burke. He'll fly through and will gain the position, so that moves Nick Burke into 5th place. But meanwhile, as this is all happening, watch out for that gap between Gronk and Jacob Reed. It's nearly now an entire pit stops lead here in this race for Jacob Reed over his main championship contender and the championship leader, Jordan Gronkowski here. This is where Gronk can decide whether he wants to make this easy or hard for Jacob Reed.
Yeah, just noticed Nielsen and Van Rensburg swap places a couple of times again, so they're still fighting a little further down. Kent Nielsen having 6/10 of an advantage over Van Rensburg at this point in time. Jacob Reed is now within a second of Jordan Gronkowski, so will pass him for the race lead very shortly, I imagine. Gronkowski will not make it easy for his main championship rival, but I think it will be relatively easy for Reed. You can see the difference in speed coming down to turn 1, and he'll have the excess grip through the opening sector as well.
Oh,
Takes
hello.
a look to the outside. Is he going to go right around the outside of Jordan Gronkowski in turn 3? He'll duck to the inside now. It's a cutback maneuver, and up towards turn 4, he backs out of it.
Look how tough this is. The 2 championship contenders, and on the exit there, no grip for Gronk. And Jacob Reed will find himself with the move through. That was comfortable in the end, but that could have been a lot more troublesome. Gronk making a statement there saying, I might not be a contender here in this one. That's a front wing gone, and I believe that is Kent Nielsen. We know he is the toughest battler in the game, and it looks like he has come together with George Van Rensburg all the way to the inside, into the corner.
Wow.
And I will put this into perspective there for George Van Rensburg. He pinched himself to the inside so much, he had no way of getting back onto the circuit to take the corner.
I mean, you say that, but at the same time, I think he was far enough alongside Kent to deserve some space into that corner. Realistically, we'd have to see it from on board with Van Rensburg to see just how far alongside he was, and almost as if we, well, here we go, up the inside, and I mean, surely he's far enough alongside. He's not quite up alongside the front wheel, but Nielsen would have known he was there. And I'm a little surprised that they ended up making contact in that one, because that's a very standard position to find yourself in when racing.
Yeah, but you got to get at least alongside halfway to be allowed that space to go and command the corner. I don't think George Van Rensburg truly had himself there, and that might be the only thing that you say was a little bit problematic there. But that's the issue that you got when George Van Rensburg needs to make a move on a circuit where you only have 2 places to make the passes. That becomes so crucial. So Jacob Reed here, in terms of this race, I still think this is a battle between 3 drivers here, Reed, Gronk and Radice. Radice stuck at 6 seconds as Florian Kamai is in. This all really depends on how long Gronk is willing to go here. If he's willing to push to about I would say he's got to go about 3-4 more laps. He'll lose the time, but he'll gain it back in terms of where he goes, and he'll probably have 7 laps. In fact, no, he'll go now. So Gronk will pit now. This is going to be a brave 26 laps if he's going to 2-stop it from here.
Does he go mediums though? I think it would be the safer thing to do in terms of you can definitely get mediums to the end from here. Softs would be a bit much. Of course, I was going to say that he doesn't really have that much of a chance of gaining time back on Reed and he goes on to another set of softs. I'll explain why he's done that in a minute, but what I was going to say is that Gronkowski and Reed still owed us 1 more stop each. Now, of course, Gronkowski has taken the stop, and Apari Ari is passing Van Kamp up the inside for 6th place. But the reason Gronkowski has gone to soft here is because he knows it's his only chance of ever leading the race again, and he's just got to hope that he can hold off Reed even when his tyres begin to go off later in the race.
The mediums might have been the safer option in terms of tyre, but if you want to try and win this race, you've got to be on the fastest tyre at the end, and that is the key to what Jordan Gronkowski needs to do. Down in 4th position, 27 seconds off of the race lead. He has got to go monstrously long in terms of his tyres and match, if not beat, the times being set currently by this driver out in front who's won 2 of the last 3 races, Jacob Reed, who leads this race outright at this point. And in the mid part of the season, he has woken up and he has said, I want to chase this championship points down. 26 points he would get in the SimSpeed Championship. If Gronk finishes in 4th, he'd only get 12. That would take that 18-point championship lead today from Jordan Gronkowski. It would drop it to 2, heading to the Red Bull Ring.
Yeah, and the 26 points, of course, come because he wins the race, so that's 25 points, along with a bonus point for fastest lap, providing he holds on to that to the end of this race. Now we look a little further back. We've got drivers streaming down the start-finish straight. There's Jason Green in 8th position, Connor Pooler in 9th, still recovering from that first lap incident. And now we've got a move for Norton Motter, who will pass Andre Langer for P11.
Langer, not much he can do there, as Norton Motter had the DRS, which is so strong around here. We've seen the likes of 0.7 of a second get pulled along that straight as drivers look at what they want to do in terms of their overtaking. So that there for Andre Langer is going to be really, really tough long term for his race, because it seems like all he's been doing today is putting himself in the right position pace-wise, but seeing position after position lost by overtake after overtake. This is a tough race on strategy, and if you do decide to pit early, this is a frustrating one for the psyche because you're constantly being overtaken, Caitlin.
Yeah, exactly. It's much better to be the hunter than the hunted, but you've just got to stay headstrong and know that your race isn't necessarily with the cars streaming past you. It's with yourself and it's with time. But anyway, we've got 23 laps to go in this race. There or thereabouts. Of course, they're about halfway through a lap now as we speak. And there is Jacob Reed leading the race and passing Florian Kammer to put him a lap down. We've got 3 drivers a lap down now, 14 still on the lead lap, including Paul O'Regan, who passes Andre Langer for 12th position.
Another one in the books, this time Paul O'Regan making the pass, and it's all about positioning out there and who is managing what. I've just seen Van Camp run a little bit wide through turn 5, but everyone who is out there right now, and Emily Van Camp is an interesting case because Emily, you feel, is trying to get to a stage where she can make that 2-stop work. The issue that she's got is that this is the way that she's had to make that strategy work. From 18th on the grid, had to try something different here, and is effectively 7th with 1 stop to go at the moment.
Well, and there's the lockup you were talking about, Jake, but gathers it up nicely. That won't cost her too much time, and probably won't cost her too much tyre life either at this stage. And there is Jason Green, currently in 8th position. And judging by my live timing at this point, he is losing out to Emily Van Camp, despite the mistake that Van Camp made earlier. 2 drivers on a similar strategy at this point in time. Must be quite interesting racing so early in the morning for Van Camp, the Australian racer. I'm sure our broadcast director Jay Kennedy can emphasize with that. Empathize, I did get it right the first time, but doing a good job of it, extending to 5.2 seconds ahead of Green now, a driver who she had to pass on track earlier on.
It is silly o'clock in Melbourne at the moment, where Emily Van Camp is driving out from at this stage. A 1:18.1 over the line for Jacob Reed, and look in the background at Eduardo Radice. A 17.9 that time brings the gap down under 5 seconds. Radice has been trying to drive a race to counter Jacob Reed, but Jacob Reed, firing the first salvos at each and every pit stop, has been making the case. I would say that for Eduardo Radice to try and win this race, he's got to go aggressive and find the undercut before Jacob Reed pits. Very difficult to do, but it's the only way Eduardo Radice can find himself through. But he'll know he'll only get 1 lap, and ideally he's got to be within 3 seconds if he wants to get the jump in the stop.
Yes, of course, and Jacob Reed could throw a spanner in the works by pitting earlier than him, and potentially a bit earlier than expected, because that would give him an extra advantage at first. But it would come with extra risks, such as being caught up in traffic. Here's Florian Kammer and Kent Nielsen fighting for 15th place. 2 drivers who are a lap down, about to be passed by Eduardo Radice. To the outside goes Nielsen, and Radice is going to have a hard time to clear these 2. They don't have much of an incentive to give this position up. They're going to lose too much time in their own race. Here we are on board with Radice, and this is one of the most frustrating situations you can find yourself in as a driver. You'll be losing time with the turbulent air in those final 2 corners. He should gain some time on the straight, as we've got Nielsen up the inside of Kammer, and he will go through as well, but does Nielsen let him through? Not yet.
Well, Ken Nielsen had every right to battle with Florian Kammer for that position. In iRacing, it's not mandatory, it's advisory, the blue flags here, which means that you do not have to move out of the way for cars to try and get back through. Unlike Formula Racing you would find in the real world. Radice finding out what makes that difficult, because he would have been desperate to find the pass on Ken Nielsen, couldn't quite manage it, and as such, all that work to get the gap down under 5 seconds has opened itself back out again. But George Van Rensburg will come in for the final pit stop of his race. Gronk is making inroads on Jacob Reed here, which will mean that Jacob Reed, at this stage, with the gap in terms of the pits, as Burke and Ari find themselves within a second and a half, I reckon that Jacob Reed's going to have to try and pass Gronk on track again.
I think he will, yeah. I have to admit, I can't see Gronkowski winning this race at this point, but I can see him having to defend from Jacob Reed not long after Reed comes out of the pits, but I mean, he'll have a long time to fend that position off. Andre Langer, meanwhile, gets through into 13th place. That's because of George Van Rensburg's recent pit stop. Florian
Medium.
Kammer now in the pits as well, and medium tyres for Langer should carry him through to the end of the race. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Gronkowski is now under 25 seconds behind Reed, and it's a relatively long pit stop here, so I imagine that he will probably come out ahead.
0.8 of a second a lap quicker than Jacob Reed at the moment. He's doing what he needs to make himself a factor in the final stages. There is Connor Pooler, and we were expecting him to make his last stop in this race. He's done very well to keep himself in range. As in comes Jason Green to get himself through, but this should be Norton Motta now looking to line up the pass, and the Brazilian who was backwards on the opening lap, so too was Connor Pooler. These two have been unable to shake each other away. That's Norton Motta now up into P7.
There we go, good move. I have still been impressed by Norton Motta in this race, despite what happened on lap 1. We have 20 laps to go in this particular race, and it's the most important 20 laps of the race as well. The gap between Reed and Radice did come down on that last lap yet again. Radice now under 5 seconds behind Jacob Reed as it was before, and it's about half a second closer than it was a couple of laps ago. You can see, wow, he gained a lot of time in Sector 1 that last time around. You can see just how much time he gained overall. I think Reed must have been held up in traffic, because that's a significant difference between the two of them. And it surely isn't long now before you see the pit stops, the final pit stop stage coming into play. Into the pits comes Nick Burke, because soft tyres can absolutely do 19 laps to go from here.
Well, I just think Jacob Reed is struggling out there. In comes Nick Burke. Emily Van Camp will come in for one more then to try and get home and dry. Connor Pooler will do exactly the same. Now on same strategy here as Emily, as all those around, so we'll be very much tuned and dialed in to where all that goes. And Eduardo Radice will find himself in a little bit of trouble then, because he's just had a mistake through Sayat, and that's dropped him back behind Kent Nielsen then on the road, and that's disastrous because Nielsen's difficult at the best of times to try and get back round again. And Eduardo Radice here with that mistake, suddenly the gap's up to 6.5 seconds. That might just be ball game for his race winning opportunities just there.
Yep, there we go. That will cost him. That will cost him a heck of a lot. Through goes Kent Nielsen. He'll have to pass him once again on track. There he goes through. The gap is 6.5 seconds as they cross the start-finish straight that time around. And George van Rensburg sets the fastest lap, having just gone on to fresh, soft tyres. But I think this is very much Jacob Reed's race to lose now. Obviously, he will have to contend with Gronkowski, especially once he makes that final pit stop. But I do think he'll have the advantage, and significantly over Eduardo Radice.
Yeah, there is Edward Apare-Ari after making his final stop of the race. He's thinking about what can I pick up here. Nick Burke is eyes forward focused at this point. This has been these two all day long looking at each other thinking, what do I have to do to get by you and to get clear in terms of places? But at least for Edward Apare-Ari at this point, this is building up some momentum for him, and this is important because he's got 1 7th place finish at Mugello. He's got an 8th place finish last time out at Montreal. This, if he can get past the likes of Motta and O'Regan, who are due to pit, will be his best finish of the season. In comes your race leader.
Indeed, the other car in the pits was Frankie Franciaccia, and in comes Radice. They're both pitting on the same lap, as is Anthony Catt. So the top three all in at exactly the same time. It will be a straight dash to the flag for them. Here's Gronkowski, who will presumably take the lead, and it will be important to see the gap between himself and Reed. Is that Jacob Reed coming out of the pits there?
That is!
And it is. So that is an extra crucial position gained for Jacob Reed. He has held off Gronkowski by 1 second. And that is the most important 1 second that you will see all day. A wonderful stint from Jacob Reed has given him the advantage over not just Jordan Gronkowski, but the entire pack. And it is very much his race to lose now.
Well, for Jordan Gronkowski here, all he can do is pressure with what tyre life he's got. And if he can try and stay and get within 1 second, he might have half a chance here of giving Jacob Reed something to think about. It's 9/10 of a second here, and he might just steal DRS. He does on this straight. So now this is big for Jordan Gronkowski because Jacob Reed needs the tyres to get up to temperature. And at the moment, Gronk is doing, just enough to keep honest in this race, Jacob Reed, but through then at Lekaixa and the Bank of Sabadell. Now, there goes the gap open to 1.1. There is the spirit breaking, and the white flag you would feel for Jordan Gronkowski's hopes of winning this race. Now Gronk's got a different challenge. Can he hold second off of Eduardo Radice from now to the end?
To be honest, Jordan Gronkowski's spirit was probably broken about 20 laps ago when Reed passed him in the penultimate stint. So a stint early for Jordan Gronkowski's liking. I think he's really going to struggle to hold off Radice and maybe even Cat in the late stages of this race, because he's already been on these tyres for nearly 9 laps time, the soft tyres, and he has to do another 16 laps, whereas Reed, Radice and Cat can pretty much push to the end now. Meanwhile, Motta and O'Regan are in the pits, so Burke will go to 5th with Apari Ari in 6th. Emily Van Camp might well gain places as well. There she goes, up into 7th place. A very good recovery drive considering her subpar qualifying. And Motta and O'Regan will have fresh tyres as well that I'm sure they can use to get back into the top 10.
A bit of news, Frankie Francica has pulled the car off the road down into the pits and has retired from this one, so that will make now 4 retirees here in this race, with Emily Van Camp at this moment the focus up 11 spots into 7th place, having a wonderful showcase. Watch out behind, this is for a point out there. George Van Rensburg and Norton Motta at this point. George with the check mark. Wide goes Motta. Here goes George Van Rensburg, the South African, against the Brazilian, down the inside, commanding the corner in through Verth.
George Van Rensburg, the fastest driver on track, as confirmed by his fastest lap, has now gone through on Norton Motta. And as far as the SimSpeed Championship is concerned, that is an all-important position. All of these drivers, of course, will gain iRacing points, but of course there are 2 different championships to focus on. And here is, well, that was Eduardo Radice about to lap Tom Leitgeb, and just up ahead of him, Jordan Gronkowski is looking bigger and bigger every lap. Radice taking a 1.5 seconds out of him. You have to ignore the lap where he lost 19 seconds. That was, of course, his pit stop. But you can see how much the fresh tyres have given him. 1.5 seconds immediately, and surely Gronkowski will have no answer to this.
Well, here's the issue. If Jordan Gronkowski pits, it's not only a signal of defeat, but it puts him right in the clutches of Nick Burke and Edward Apari Ari, which will not even guarantee 4th place at this moment in time. He is committed to this strategy to try and hold on as Jacob Reed sets the fastest lap of the race on a 15.7 as he crosses the line. Brilliant stuff. But you feel for Gronkowski here. He's got to hold off Radice, and he's got to try and hold off Cat. Worst at the moment, he's got his 4th place. He'll have 20 seconds then to Nick Burke. I think he's realising that either he committed to the pit stop and committed to 4th, or he can try and fight to not get 4th, and I think that's what he's playing with at the moment, as Radice will try and give chase.
Yeah, and Jacob Reed's lap that last time around, 15.7. That's the first lap that we've seen under 1 minute 18. And considering qualifying, he set a 1:13.9. You've got to imagine that his virtual driver's neck is hanging on for dear life around these corners with the G-forces that he'll be pulling, with the speed that he'll be going. And he now extends his lead out to 5.5 seconds over Gronkowski. And considering he only passed him 3 laps ago, that shows you just how quickly he's going at this point in time. Radice is now within 2 seconds of Gronkowski, and by the end of this lap, he'll be within a second.
Yeah, so there is certainly some sense that in these later stages of this race, there is going to be Gronk trying to hold on, not just in terms of Eduardo Radice, but 4 seconds back of that, which is Anthony Cat, who could play himself into this race right now, doing 16.6s compared to Eduardo Radice. I would say second is not off the table for Anthony Cat right now. It depends how difficult Gronk wants to make this for the Italian here, who has on 6 occasions been on the podium, not got a victory in the back pocket, and it might still yet be 7 podiums this season without a race win. On the brakes, that's Sayat, and he's there.
I think it will be. Gronkowski's real race now is versus Anthony Cat, but first of all, Eduardo Radice has to get the move done nice and cleanly. He does have the advantage, but of course it is his responsibility to make the overtake. Gronkowski just needs to hold his line and hope that Eduardo Radice can do it without costing them too much time. Here we are through the Kijkse towards the end of the lap. Of course, Radice's best opportunity will be down into turn 1 with the slipstream. He'll get a much better exit to the final corner. In fact, he's going to be right on the back of Gronkowski even before that turn, getting all of the turbulent air. And now he will get the DRS and the overspeed. He'll be using all of his power, and he'll go through midway down the straight.
Nothing that can be done for Jordan Gronkowski. And behind that, the traffic getting out of the way there. That's Tom Lightgeb moving out for Anthony Cat. So now Cat will try and chase on down and use his pace to go through. Another 6/10 off of Eduardo Radice. That gap now is under 4 seconds, and it's 3 seconds to Jordan Gronkowski. That's what Anthony Cat's looking at next, trying to get this all-important move. Anthony Cat, remember, comes in today 22nd in the championship with just 8 championship points scored in the first 9 rounds. So un-Anthony Cat-like.
Absolutely, and he's been pretty cat-like today. Very sleek, very slick, very fast, and approaching the back of the car ahead of him. In terms of the iRacing Championship, of course, Anthony Cat is 4th in those standings, but yes, in the SimSpeed broadcast that we've shown, he hasn't been quite as successful. Today, of course, he's showing us what he is made of, what he's capable of, and that is why he's the most likely to be on the podium at this point in time. He will have to pass Jordan Gronkowski though, and on the last lap the gap came down by 2 seconds. Anthony Cat flying here and sets a personal best lap of the race.
But crucially lost 0.3 of a second to Eduardo Radice on that last lap. So he's really going to need the slipstream here. He needs to pull within a second as that's all going on. That's Jason Green in 8th. That's Connor Pooler in 9th. And Connor Pooler trying to jump through and gain another place here and a few extra points. It's not often that you say that you spun around on the opening corners of this race, come back and still get a point-scoring finish.
No, I mean, the only other person who can really say that this season is Jordan Gronkowski. Done it a couple of times, even back at the opening round of the season. And here is Pooler up the inside of Green, gets up into 8th position, and meanwhile, Paul O'Regan has passed George van Rensburg for 11th.
Yeah, Paul O'Regan making a late charge. He's always got a way of finding himself in and around the point. That's how he's got himself to 10th in the championship out there. And of course, he's got a 9th, 2 8s, and a 6th place in his back pocket. So Paul O'Regan trying to pick up another one. Gap now 1.1 for Jordan Gronkowski. And suddenly, the threat looms in the distance. It's Anthony Cat wanting to try and put his place on the podium with 10 laps to go.
And the gap for the lead is 7.7 seconds between Reed and Radice. I'm just keeping you up to date just in case anything happens later on. But with the pace that Reed is able to show still, there is little chance that Eduardo Radice can challenge him for the race win. We are watching the battle between Gronkowski and Cat for that 3rd position. I think Gronkowski should be safe from Nick Burke, who is 22 seconds back as it stands. To be honest, there is still a chance that Gronkowski could make a pit stop and make it back through towards the end of the race, but he does not want to do that. I think it's a little bit of sunk cost fallacy at this point in time. He said, "Well, I've left out this long, I might as well go the distance." But he will probably still lose out to Anthony Cat. We're riding on board with the deep blue car of Cat as he approaches the tail of Gronkowski, and this is looking very familiar. We saw this just a few minutes ago with Radice, and he was able to pass him on the straight, so Cat is going to be hard to hold back here.
If Jordan Gronkowski gets overtaken here by Anthony Cat, I think there is a case that he can come in and make a pit stop here, still take 4th place, but he'll have to get past the Pari and Nick Burke. And the reason why, Caitlin, would be the fastest lap bonus point, it would be a 2-point swing. It wouldn't be 2 points then, heading, of course, over towards the Red Bull Ring. It would be 4 points.
That is a good point, actually, but if he's going to do that, he probably should have done it several laps ago, because he was always going to lose out to Radice and Cat. But, you know, better late than never, I suppose. Here's Jason Green fighting with Norton Motta. Motta on his tail and going quicker at this point in time. We'll approach him, heading out to that final turn. DRS open, power deployed, goes to the right-hand side, and will go through, heading up towards turn 1. Still a good recovery drive from the likes of Connor Pooler and Norton Motta, who may well have a race between themselves before the end of the race. They've swapped places a couple of times themselves, and Paul O'Regan watched it all happen from the distance in 11th position.
Well, Jason Green has only had a 10th place finish this season, and he might have his heart break if Paul O'Regan's got anything to say about it here in the final stages. All these points matter. 1 point, 2 points, 4 points. They're all there. They're all up for grabs. All these drivers are going to be trying to take this one away. Norton Motta thinking about 8th place at this point in time. Would definitely love a couple points, or I'd say a few points to go home with at this point. But in the final stages, every place has that point value towards it, and you really prioritise it more on where you can find an extra move here or there. Speaking of which, Kammeyer and Nielsen battling it out down there 14th and 15th.
Yeah, Nielsen just passed Kammeyer over 14th position, and these two still a lap down, but still enjoying their little battle amongst themselves, I'm sure. Continuing on with the race with 8 laps to go. And here is Norton Motta once again passing Connor Pooler. He's had to do that a couple of times today, and does get through yet again. Jason Green sees it all happen. Front row seats for him. Paul O'Regan seems a bit closer to him than he was a lap ago, though. So that battle's not over yet for the final points paying position, and I think Green could do well to hang on to this one here.
He would definitely love that. He'd double his points, or he'd be on 2 SimSpeed Championship points if he were to be able to get this sorted. Paul O'Regan trying to get that drive out then of Sayat up the hill towards turn 7 and 8, which is Verth. And now you need the drive up the hill to the Campsa corner, turn 9, off camber. One of the most incredible corners in racing to try and get correct. And then on the plateau, heading to Lekaixa, turn 10, a brilliant place to find overtaking opportunities. And the one thing I do love about this layout, it's known as the historic 95 here out there on iRacing. This was just before Formula One transformed and went back to this layout that we have out there at this moment in time. But I love it because it is so fast flowing through the final sector. It gives this wonderful slingshot onto this straight.
It's so much better than the alternative that they were using for several years, that's for sure. Here we are on board with Paul O'Regan, who once again is close to the back of Jason Green, but unfortunately for him, Green maintained the slipstream from the cars ahead of him, as did Connor Pooler, so they're in a little bit of a stalemate at this point in time. There is another DRS zone coming up on this lap though. Here we go through turn 4, looking for a way through, but time running out slightly, 6 laps to go in this one. And no sign of Gronkowski pitting, so you have to suggest that he's still committed to staying out to the end. He knows that he would have to pass Burke and Apariari on the road, which would not be an easy feat. So it's just straight to the end from here. Don't blow a tyre or anything like that. Don't stick it in the wall, and you will maintain 4th position.
Well, it's now 20 seconds, the gap here between Gronkowski and Burke. No doubt that Nick Burke might actually have too far of a gap now to be chased down. Were Jordan Gronkowski to jump in the pits, get a set of tyres, it's about 28 seconds lane time, so that'd be really tough. Now, this is something to keep an eye out on. Eduardo Radice, 1:17.8, lost about 2/10. It's still 4 seconds, so you get a sense for Eduardo Radice. You can't let up here. It's going to be tough. Now, here goes Paul O'Regan. This is for a championship point. Down the inside, trying to take it away. Jason Green holds it around the outside, but does he compromise himself too much? Heading towards turn 3. No, he's just about got it covered, but look at what it's cost them, that battling. That'll be a second from Connor Pooler out the window.
Indeed, Connor Pooler gaining that time, and that's actually what Paul O'Regan would like at this point, because it means that Jason Green might well lose DRS soon and will be a little bit more vulnerable. O'Regan will be able to get himself into that points paying position, but only 5 laps left to do it in. There you see the graphic battle for 8th, Norton Motta, Connor Paula, Jason Green and Paul O'Regan. And this is what I was talking about earlier, how different strategies can converge as the race goes along, and you can end up racing someone at the end who you haven't seen since the very start of the race. But here we are heading towards the start-finish straight once again. This is an important corner to get the power down out of, and then you have a long straight of slipstreaming and DRS in which you're able to get closer to the car ahead of you.
Absolutely. Here goes the chance again. Paul O'Regan, full bore on the DRS, and will find the pass. That will break Jason Green, and back into 11th place he will have to go. Nothing more, nothing less. Paul O'Regan finding a way into the point as Andre Lange might just go for the fastest lap bonus point here, diving into the pits, trying to take that away. So that's important in the context of this race for Jacob Reed and for Jordan Gronkowski. If Lange decides that he can go quicker than anybody else out there with a handful of laps to go. Also worth pointing out, Nick Burke's had an incredible drive here today, up 4 places, Caitlin, and is keeping Edward Apariari at bay.
Yeah, great drive from Nick Burke. I still can't really get over his avoiding action when he had to swing past George van Rensburg, who was sliding earlier on in the race, and really he's got to give himself a pat on the back for finishing this one, let alone being in 5th position with 4 laps to go. But yeah, if Andre Lange was able to take the fastest lap, that would be a little bit deflating from Jacob Reed. He's got to find 2 seconds on his own best lap, but with low fuel and soft tyres and fresh tyres, it's definitely doable. He'll have to potentially pass whoever that is in front of him. I think it's Gronkowski actually, who's a lap ahead.
Yeah.
And
so
George van Rensburg had the same idea.
Yeah, come into the pits, try and take the fastest lap bonus point away. Why not? It is that stage. If you've got nothing to go for, you might as well take the point away from everyone else. There is Jacob Reed, your race leader right now, 8 seconds clear of Eduardo Radice, who I think is only just going to come out here ahead of George van Rensburg a lap down. So George right now has got to really turn up the wick, and he might need a bit of slipstream in front, and that's Gronkowski having to let through the lap traffic of Andre Lange there to get through. So Lange can only say, you know what, I've got all the pace in the world. Look how the difference is. He only got through on the straight. He's now a 2.5 clear.
Well, he can now genuinely say he overtook the race leader, the championship leader rather, and that would be true, but of course he was a lap down. Here he is heading through the middle sector of the lap. The first sector, 21.6. He'll have been held up slightly by going past Jordan Gronkowski, but also would have got the DRS down the start-finish straight. And now heading through the second sector of the course, one of the faster sectors that you get with that extra DRS zone and the quick corner known as Campset. And then you head into a much slower couple of corners towards the end of the lap. But I think he will take the fastest lap, actually, at least according to his sector times so far.
Fastest sector 1, fastest sector 2. Is this going to be a championship point that Jordan Gronkowski is going to have a little smile about heading over the line? It's a 1:15.4. Yeah. Andre Lange is going to take the fastest lap away. He won't get a point unless he finds a way to the top 10. That won't happen. George van Rensburg's attempt here might be stymied over the course of this by Eduardo Radice, and this is where Radice has got to be so careful, because he's got to work out that George van Rensburg's just come in, made a stop, has got tyres that he wants to go out there and use, and Eduardo Radice cannot afford to play games with the lap traffic.
Yeah, hopefully Radice knows they're not on the same lap. He'll probably be looking in his mirrors like, what? Where did you come from? But anyway, George van Rensburg will be theoretically quicker here, so he should go through. And Radice should let him go through, because he's not under pressure from Cat and not pressuring Jacob Reed at this point in time. So the safest thing to do is just to give them what you want. As Jacob Reed is about to start the final lap of the race now. He's driven this race to perfection, and just like he did last time, gained the advantage in the pit stages. Gained a sizable advantage, which he's been able to fend off And through goes Van Rensburgen now. He will pass Radice on the road and at least get that position. And that'll give him a bit of a boost onto this lap too, as he gets the DRS and the slipstream heading onto his fastest lap attempt.
He will try and push on his final lap to get the fastest lap. Jacob Reed will do everything to hold on and make sure that he confirms another victory. We've also got Emily Van Camp versus Norton Motta on the final lap of the race to keep in mind. This will be for 7th place. And Norton Motta having a little bit of a joke with Emily, saying, come on, blue flags, you've got to give the place. No, you're going to have to try and make the pass out there on circuit. And this might be the place where it happens. Motta now hard to the inside, trying to shake is Emily Van Camp. Left, right, but no chance. Forward march, and just enough room given. Norton Motta scything his way into 7th position. Will now look to hold for a lap, but nobody could stop him today once again. And an almighty scythe back in his championship efforts. It's down to 3 championship points. It's a big win for Jacob Reed today. Eduardo Radice will come home with 2nd, and Anthony Catt for the first time will go through, and George Van Rensburg will steal the fastest lap bonus point away from Andre Lange, but he cannot cash it in.
1:14.9, that's about what he did in qualifying. Very impressive stuff from George Van Rensburg there in 12th position, but unfortunately it won't matter as far as the points are confirmed. Across the line has gone Jordan Gronkowski to deliver a slightly disappointing 4th position. Nick Burke will be 5th. Edouard Apari-Ari will be a creditable 6th, and then you've got this fight here between Norton Motta, who was facing backwards on the opening lap, and Emily Van Camp, who I think had qualified 18th. So these two drivers have both been on an impressive recovery drive. The same can be said for Connor Paula, who will finish 9th behind them. And the final, whoa, debris flies everywhere, but it doesn't matter because the race is over. And the final points paying position will go the way of Paul O'Regan, who did pass Jason Green in the latter stages.
Yeah, Emily Van Camp quite unhappy with that performance, frustrated, but still really commendable in terms of that to get 8th place overall. But Jacob Reed is finding the form that he has desperately been looking for so long. He now finds himself at just 3 points back of Gronkowski, and he realizes that he is now waking up to what he's got. He's not had a 3rd place this season, but now that puts him with 4 second places and 4 wins this season overall. We'll get confirmation of results here from Montemelo in Barcelona, Spain, and conquering the Catalan region is Jacob Reed. 8 seconds clear of Eduardo Radice, with Anthony Catt the final spot on the podium. First time this season he is even able to finish inside the top 6. That is a big result for Anthony Catt. Jordan Gronkowski, for the first time since the Nürburgring, is off of the podium. His 4 first, his 2nd and 3 third places. Well, he now has 2 4th places right now, but still retains the championship lead heading to the Red Bull Ring. Nick Burke with a 5th place finish, meaning his results are 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th in his 5-point scoring hauls. Edward Apari-Ari would finish 6th ahead of Norton Motta in 7th, taking it late over Emily Van Camp, with Connor Paula 9th position after facing backwards on the opening lap, and Paul O'Regan sneaking home with a final championship point. Jason Green would be on the outside looking in that regard. 11th place for him, with George Van Rensburg taking the fastest lap but not the bonus point in 12th position. It's then Andre Lange in 13th and Florian Kammeyer 14th. Those are the last drivers 1 lap down. Kent Nielsen and Tom Leitgeb would be 2 laps down apiece. And the retirees would include Frankie Francica, Dan Piazza, Klaus Siemitz, Balazs Galliar. And that would make the 20 here today in terms of their challenge. But the 28th of June, we will just have to wait 7 days, Caitlin, for the next round to come along. And this is a much different circuit to Barcelona. This is high speed, high braking, and this might just be the transfer that's needed for Gronk in terms of style to challenge Jacob Reed.
Yeah, exactly. The Austrian Grand Prix circuit is a classic of the of any Formula One style calendar, and I am very much looking forward to this. It's one of my favourite circuits to watch a race on. Quite a short circuit as well, so the drivers can get plenty of practice in. Traffic might come into play as the race goes on. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out.
You can only catch it with us here at SimSpeed TV. The iRacing Grand Prix Tour never rests with us here, and there is so much amazing racing that goes on SimSpeed. If you haven't had the chance to already, you can like, you can share, you can subscribe. You've always got the opportunity to watch amazing racing with us. But from the entire team that's brought it here today, from Jay Kennedy, from Caitlin Penny, my name has been Jake Sperry. This was seismic today. Not often that you see Jordan Gronkowski off the podium, but it's a return to form for Anthony Catt. It's a 7th podium for Eduardo Radice without finding the top step overall. But Jacob Reed, the reigning champion, says that Gronk, you are going to have to work for it. The gap is down to 3 championship points and 3 reasons why you should watch, of course, the next round 1 week from today. The Red Bull Ring awaits. But for Jacob Reed, 3 moments that he knows that he needs right now. A pole, a win, a fastest lap, and he'll be on top, leaving, of course, Spielberg in Austria.